My name is Chelsea and I am 23 years old, a senior in college with big dreams. When I returned from my internship in Hawaii, I was floating on cloud nine, ready to share my success. But as I opened my bedroom door, my heart stopped. Everything was gone. My room had been transformed into a fancy Livestream studio for my brother Tyler. My dad pointed to the old shed in our backyard and said those words, "I will never forget. Stay here or get out of the house." With tears streaming down my face, I left. Let me know where you are watching from and hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever felt betrayed by the people who should love you most. Before everything fell apart, I had what I thought was a normal family. My father, Frank, was 50 years old, a construction supervisor who worked long hours and took pride in providing for our family. My mother, Linda, 48, worked as an administrative assistant at a local dental office. Then, there was my younger brother, Tyler, 19, who had always been the baby of the family. We lived in a modest, 3-bedroom home in a suburban neighborhood in Ohio. Nothing fancy, but it was home. At least that is what I thought. Growing up, our family was warm and loving. Dad would take us fishing on weekends and Mom would make her famous apple pie for Sunday dinners. Tyler and I would squabble like most siblings, but there was always an underlying affection. We were Team Roberts, as Dad liked to say. That all began to change when Tyler discovered live streaming games during his senior year of high school. What started as a casual hobby quickly became an obsession. Tyler would lock himself in his room for hours talking to strangers online while playing various video games. Initially, my parents were concerned about his grades and social life. "You need to spend time in the real world," Mom would say. Dad was more direct. "No son of mine is going to become some basement dweller." But then, something unexpected happened. Tyler started gaining followers. What began as just a few dozen viewers grew to hundreds, then thousands. Within 6 months, he had over 7,000 followers on his channel. People were donating money during his streams, sometimes hundreds of dollars in a single session. The change in my parents was subtle at first, then unmistakable. "Did you see how many people watched Tyler last night?" Mom would mention, casually over breakfast. Dad, who had always dismissed video games as a waste of time, started asking Tyler about viewership numbers and engagement metrics. The pride in his voice was unmistakable. Meanwhile, I was pursuing my degree in architecture, working part-time at a coffee shop to pay for my books expenses. My achievements were acknowledged with polite nods and quick "that is nice honey" comments before the conversation inevitably shifted back to Tyler and his growing online presence. I had always been the responsible one. I maintained a 3.8 GPA while working 20 hours a week. I joined clubs, volunteered, and did everything a good daughter was supposed to do. Yet, somehow, Tyler pointing a camera at himself while playing games was becoming the family success story. The internship opportunity in Hawaii was a big deal for me. The Nakamura architectural firm was renowned for their sustainable design approach, and being selected from hundreds of applicants was a significant achievement. When I announced at dinner that I had been chosen, Mom smiled and said, "That is wonderful, sweetie." Dad nodded approvingly, but within minutes, Tyler mentioned that a gaming peripheral company had sent him free equipment to review, and suddenly that became the focus of the entire evening. The week before my trip, I noticed more changes around the house. Dad spent an entire Saturday helping Tyler install acoustic panels in his room. Mom was researching better lighting setups online. When I asked if someone could drive me to the airport for my early morning flight, there was an awkward silence. "We will have to see," Dad finally said. "Tyler has a special stream that night with some big names in the gaming world." I ended up taking an Uber to the airport at 4 o'clock in the morning. During my week in Hawaii, I was too busy to notice the increasingly infrequent texts from home. The internship was incredible, working with talented architects on an eco-friendly resort design. I learned more in those 7 days than in an entire semester of classes. The team praised my work ethic and design sensibility. The firm director even hinted at a possible job offer after graduation. The night before returning home, I called Mom on video chat. She answered while cooking dinner, the phone propped against a container on the counter. "How is everything?" I asked, eager to share my experiences. Fine, fine, she replied. But her attention kept drifting off screen. I could hear Dad and Tyler talking excitedly in the background about some new equipment. Mom kept glancing toward them, smiling. Mom, I had to say to recapture her attention. Sorry, honey. Tyler just hit a new milestone with his subscribers. What were you saying about the beach? Despite that call, I was still excited to return home. I had brought small gifts for everyone, a handcrafted wooden figurine for Dad, a pearl bracelet for Mom, and a limited edition gaming keychain for Tyler that I had found in a local shop. The taxi dropped me off after a long flight, and I wheeled my suitcase to the front door, jet-lagged, but happy to be home. I had no idea that everything was about to change. I inserted my key into the lock, turned it, and pushed open the door. The house smelled different, like fresh paint, new electronics. I called out, I am home, but no one answered. Dragging my suitcase behind me, I made my way upstairs to my bedroom. The door was closed, but I could hear voices coming from inside my brother and someone else I did not recognize. Without thinking twice, I turned the knob and pushed the door open. Hey, I am Ba. The words died in my throat as I took in the scene before me. My bedroom was unrecognizable. The walls were now covered in dark gray sound-dampening foam. Where my bed had once stood was a large L-shaped desk with multiple monitors. Professional lighting equipment hung from stands around a green screen that covered the wall where my bookshelf used to be. My brother sat in a gaming chair that probably cost more than my entire flight to Hawaii. A shocked expression on his face. A voice came from his headphones. Tyler, everything. Okay, man, I will call you back, Tyler muttered before removing his headset. He looked at me with annoyance rather than guilt. You should knock before barging in. Barging in? This is my room. I managed to say, my voice rising with each word. Where is all my stuff? What happened? The sound of footsteps coming up the stairs interrupted us as both my parents appeared in the doorway behind me. My mother at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. My father simply crossed his arms over his chest. Chelsea, you are home early. We thought your flight was getting in tonight, Mom said, as if that explained everything. What is going on? Where are my things? I demanded, looking from one parent to the other. Dad cleared his throat. Tyler needed a proper studio space for his streaming career. The lighting in his room was terrible and it was too small for all the equipment. So, you just took my room without asking me where am I supposed to sleep? The panic was rising in my chest. This had to be some kind of sick joke. We moved your things to the shed out back, Mom said quietly. We fixed it up a little, put in a bed and some shelves. The shed? I repeated in disbelief. The shed was a dilapidated structure at the far end of our backyard. It had been used for storing garden tools and Christmas decorations. You expect me to live in the shed? Tyler stood up from his chair, towering over me at 6'3". Look, this is a professional setup now. I have sponsors coming to me. I made $3,000 last month from subscriptions alone. Good for you, I snapped. But that does not give you the right to take my room. Chelsea, my father said in that stern tone. I had grown up fearing Tyler has a real opportunity here. This could be his career. Your room was the only one with the right dimensions and natural light for his needs. What about my needs? I asked, my voice breaking. I just spent a week working 12-hour days at an internship that could determine my entire future. I am paying my way through college. I have a career path, too. Do not be so dramatic, Dad said, dismissively. You can stay in the shed until you graduate. It is only a few more months, or there is always the couch. I pushed past my parents and ran downstairs out the back door to see this shed they expected me to live in. It was exactly as I feared. Despite their claims of fixing it up, the shed was little more than a wooden box. Yes, they had squeezed in a twin mattress on a metal frame and installed a single bare light bulb. But the space was tiny, maybe 8 foot by 6 foot. The walls were uninsulated and I could see daylight through cracks in the wood. There was no heating or cooling, no bathroom, no privacy. A stack of plastic bins contained what I assumed were my belongings. I opened one and found my clothes haphazardly shoved inside, many wrinkled beyond recognition. Another contained books with bent pages and damaged covers. My architectural models and portfolios representing countless hours of work were crushed beneath heavier items. When I returned to the house, I was shaking with rage and hurt. My family was in the kitchen, Tyler already munching on a sandwich as if nothing unusual had happened. You cannot expect me to live in that shack, I said, my voice trembling. It is not that bad, Mom offered weakly. We could get a space heater for colder nights. Are you serious right now? There is no bathroom. What am I supposed to do? Walk across the yard in the middle of the night to pee in the winter? Dad slammed his hand on the counter. Enough. You are being selfish, Chelsea. Tyler has a real shot at making something of himself here. Do you know how much top streamers make? We are talking hundreds of thousands, maybe millions eventually. And what about me? I asked. Does my future not matter at all? Of course it does, honey, Mom said. But you have always been so independent, so capable. Tyler needs our support right now. Support? You kicked me out of my own room without even telling me. You crammed my belongings into plastic bins and expected me to live in a glorified doghouse. Tyler rolled his eyes. Stop being such a drama queen. Plenty of people would kill for the opportunity to live rent-free, even in a shed. Do you know how much apartments cost these days? Something broke inside me at that moment. The realization that my family had not just made a thoughtless decision, they had deliberately chosen to prioritize my brother over me. They had weighed our worth and found me lacking. I am not staying in that shed, I said quietly. Then what are you going to do? Dad asked, his voice challenging. He gestured toward the back door. Stay there or get out of the house. Those are your options. Mom looked alarmed. Frank, surely we can figure something out. No, Linda. She needs to understand how the real world works. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the greater good of the family. Greater good? I laughed bitterly. You mean for Tyler? Because he is the only one who matters now. I turned and walked upstairs to what used to be my room. Tyler followed, hovering anxiously in the doorway. What are you doing? Getting my essentials, I replied coldly, as I rummaged through the closet, which now held expensive camera equipment alongside a few of my jackets that had been deemed unworthy of being moved to the shed. I grabbed my laptop charger and a few items of clothing. You are seriously overreacting, Tyler said. Just stay in the shed for a while. Once I make it big, I will buy you a house or something. I looked at my brother, this stranger, who had been so transformed by a taste of online fame that he could not even see the betrayal in his actions. Good luck with your streaming career, Tyler. I hope those strangers on the internet fill the hole where your family should be. As I walked downstairs with my backpack and a small duffel bag, Mom was crying in the kitchen. Dad stood firm, his face set in stone. If you walk out that door, do not expect us to support you anymore. No more help with tuition, no more health insurance, nothing. I paused at the door, the weight of what was happening finally hitting me. I was about to be homeless, but the alternative, accepting that I was worth less than a Livestream setup, was unthinkable. You already stopped supporting me the moment you decided I did not deserve a room in my own home, I said, and then I walked out, tears streaming down my face, not knowing where I would sleep that night, but certain I could never call that house home again. The moment the door closed behind me, panic set in. It was late afternoon and I had nowhere to go. Sitting on the curb a block away from my house, I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and called Olivia, my best friend since freshman year of college. Chelsea, I thought you were coming back from Hawaii today. Her familiar voice answered. I did. I managed to say before breaking down in tears. Through sobs, I explained what had happened. Those jerks, Olivia exclaimed. Come stay with me. My roommate is visiting her parents this week, so you can have her bed for now. That night, curled up on an unfamiliar bed in Olivia's apartment, reality crashed down on me. I had $836 in my bank account. My job at the coffee shop paid just above minimum wage. Tuition for my final year was due in 2 months. My car was still registered under my parents' insurance. Even my phone was on the family plan. The next morning, I made a list of everything I needed to figure out immediately. Housing, income, tuition, transportation, phone, health insurance. The magnitude of suddenly being entirely on my own was overwhelming. Olivia helped me search for apartments, but everything near campus was either booked or way beyond my budget. Finally, after 2 weeks of searching, I found a tiny studio apartment 4 or 5 minutes from campus by bus. The neighborhood was not great, and the building had seen better days, but the rent was just within reach if I picked up more work hours. My manager at the coffee shop could not offer me more than 30 hours per week, so I found a second job stocking shelves at a grocery store on weekends. Between the two jobs and my full course load, I was working nearly 60 hours a week while trying to maintain my GPA. The studio apartment was barely 300 square feet with a kitchenette that consisted of a mini fridge, a 2-burner hot plate, and a sink that dripped constantly. The bathroom had mold in the corners that I could never quite eliminate, no matter how much bleach I used, but it was mine, and no one could take it away from me. During that first month, I tried calling my mother several times. The conversations were brief and strained. "We miss you," she would say, but make no offer to help or acknowledge the wrong they had done. "Tyler is doing so well. He got a sponsorship from a gaming chair company." Always back to Tyler. My attempts to speak with my father went nowhere. He either did not answer my calls or handed the phone to my mother after a tour greeting. Once I tried calling the house phone when I knew he would be home alone, but he hung up as soon as he heard my voice. The one unexpected connection I maintained was with our elderly neighbor, Nancy Wilson. She had lived next door to my family for over 20 years and had always been kind to me. She called me one evening about a month after I left. "Chelsea, dear, I hope you do not mind me calling. Your mother gave me your number months ago for emergency purposes," she explained. "I just wanted to check that you are all right. I have not seen you around." I found myself telling Nancy everything. She listened without judgment, occasionally making sympathetic noises. "That does not sound like the Linda and Frank I know," she said finally, "but I have noticed changes lately. Your brother has a new car. Did you know? Some fancy thing that makes a terrible noise when he revs the engine." The news stung. Tyler had a new car while I was counting pennies for bus fare and eating ramen noodles for dinner 4 nights a week. Nancy became my occasional window into the life I had left behind, calling every few weeks to check on me and inadvertently keeping me updated on my family. The hardest moments were not the long work shifts or the late nights studying or even the dingy apartment. It was the quiet moments like when the radiator in my apartment clanked loudly on the first cold night of fall, and I had no one to laugh about it with, or when I aced a difficult design project and came home to an empty apartment with no one to tell. I did have one precious item from my past life, something I had been wearing when I left home that day, a silver bracelet my grandmother had given me on my 16th birthday for my strong girl, she had said as she fastened it around my wrist. "Sometimes life asks more of some people than others, but you have steel in your spine, Chelsea. You always have." On the loneliest nights, I would touch that bracelet and try to find that steel she believed was there. The financial reality of my situation became increasingly dire as the semester progressed. My savings were depleted within 2 months. I was bringing home just enough to cover rent and bare necessities, with nothing left for emergencies. When my laptop essential for my architecture programs began showing signs of failure, I spent 3 nights in a cold sweat, wondering what I would do if it died completely. To save money, I walked whenever possible, instead of taking the bus despite the approaching winter. I learned grocery stores discounted their nearly expired food at the end of the day. I turned down invitations to go out with classmates, making excuses about assignments rather than admitting I could not afford even a cheap dinner out. Thanksgiving was particularly difficult. Olivia invited me to join her family, but I picked up an extra shift at the grocery store instead, telling myself I needed the money more than I needed turkey and awkward questions about my family situation. I ate a microwave dinner that night in my apartment, scrolling through social media to see photos of happy families gathered around tables laden with food. I blocked Tyler's accounts after seeing a post about his amazing new streaming equipment with a caption thanking our parents for their support. Christmas was worse. The coffee shop closed for 3 days, cutting into my already meager income. The heating in my apartment building was unreliable, and I spent several nights sleeping in layers of clothing under all the blankets I owned. I could not afford gifts for anyone, not even Olivia, who had been my lifeline. Instead, I drew her a detailed sketch of the two of us based on a photo from freshman year before everything fell apart. She cried when I gave it to her, and I pretended it was a choice rather than a necessity. By the time spring semester began, I had developed a routine of sorts. Wake up at 5 o'clock, study until 8 classes, until 2 coffee shop, until 10 more studying until midnight, then collapse into bed to do it all again the next day. Weekends were for the grocery store job and catching up on projects. There was no room for anything else. No time for friends or dating or even simple pleasures like watching a movie or reading a book that was not assigned for class. But despite everything, I was surviving. More than that, I was maintaining my GPA, building a portfolio that was starting to attract attention from my professors. I had learned to be completely self-sufficient in ways most of my classmates had not. I could change a fuse, negotiate with a landlord budget to the penny, and find creative solutions to problems most college students would call their parents to solve. I was existing, if not living, and I told myself that was enough for now. The future I had always planned for was still possible, just with a different path than I had expected. I kept my head down and pushed forward one day at a time, trying not to think about what I had lost or how much I still missed the family that had decided I was dispensable. As the spring semester progressed, something unexpected happened. Professor Sullivan, my advanced architectural design instructor, asked me to stay after class one day. "Chelsea, your work has been exceptional this semester," he said, shuffling through my latest project submissions. "But I have noticed you seem stretched thin. Is everything all right?" Something about his genuine concern broke through the careful wall I had built around myself. Before I knew it, I was telling him about my situation, trying to keep my voice steady and professional despite the subject matter. Instead of the pity I feared, Professor Sullivan nodded thoughtfully. "I worked 3 jobs during my graduate program," he shared. "Not by choice, but by necessity. It shaped my approach to design, made me more resourceful." He paused, studying me. "Have you considered applying for the Morton Scholarship? It is specifically for students demonstrating exceptional talent and financial need. The scholarship covered full tuition for a semester with the possibility of renewal." With Professor Sullivan as a reference, I was awarded the funding 2 weeks later. The relief of not having to worry about the next tuition payment was indescribable. For the first time in months, I slept a full night without waking in a panic about money. Around the same time, a small design firm downtown was looking for a part-time junior designer. The pay was better than both my other jobs combined, and more importantly, it was relevant experience for my career. I submitted my portfolio, went through 3 rounds of interviews, and was offered the position. "Your portfolio shows a maturity we rarely see in students," the firm director Allison told me. "There is a practicality to your designs balanced with creativity that is hard to teach." At the firm, I met Sophia, another designer a few years older than me. We were assigned to collaborate on a small commercial renovation project, and during late nights at the office, we began to share our stories. Sophia had also struggled with family issues, though of a different nature. "My parents wanted me to be a doctor," she explained as we worked on renderings one evening. "When I chose design instead, they cut me off completely." "We have not spoken in 4 years. Do you regret it?" I asked, thinking of my own severed family ties. Sophia considered the question carefully. "I regret the loss of relationship, but not my choice. I would have been a miserable doctor and a resentful daughter. This way, I am at least happy with myself even if I am sad about them." Her perspective helped me frame my own situation differently. The choices had not been mine, but the response to those choices was I could allow my parents' actions to define my life, or I could build something new that was entirely my own. Working at the design firm opened up new possibilities. I was learning skills that went beyond my coursework, understanding the business side of architecture, and building a network of professional connections. I reduced my hours at the coffee shop and quit the grocery store job entirely, giving me something I had not experienced in months: a few free hours each week. With this newfound time, I began exploring my neighborhood. I discovered a small community garden 3 blocks from my apartment and volunteered to help. On Sunday mornings, digging my hands into soil, planting seeds, and watching them grow became a metaphor for my own life. Nurturing something new from the ground up. I also began rebuilding my social connections. I joined a study group for my structural engineering class, started accepting occasional invitations for coffee with classmates, and even attended a birthday celebration for Sophia at a local restaurant. These small steps toward a normal life felt both foreign and essential. During spring break, I took a bus to visit my grandmother in Cincinnati. I had been avoiding her partly because I did not want to put her in the middle of the family conflict, and partly because I was ashamed of my circumstances. At 82, Grandma Ruth was still sharp as a tack and saw through my vague explanations immediately. "Something has happened with your parents," she stated rather than asked as we sat in her small kitchen. "Linda has been evasive whenever I ask about you, and that is not like her." The whole story poured out of me then. Every painful detail I had been holding back in my occasional phone calls with her. When I finished, she took my hand, her papery skin cool against mine. "You know," she said slowly, "your grandfather and I did not speak for nearly 2 years after we had a terrible argument about his drinking. The silence nearly killed me, but I would not compromise on what I knew was right." She squeezed my hand. "Sometimes the hardest path is the one that preserves your dignity. I am proud of you for not accepting less than you deserve, Chelsea. But I miss them," I admitted, voicing the truth I had been denying. "Even after what they did, I miss having a family." "Of course you do. But honey, family is not just about blood. It is about who treats you like you matter." She touched the silver bracelet on my wrist. "Remember what I told you when I gave you this? You have steel in your spine. This difficult time is forging that steel, making you stronger. Not everyone gets tested this way, but those who do and survive, they become extraordinary." I returned to my tiny apartment with a renewed sense of purpose. If I could not have the family I was born into, at least not right now, I would create a family of choice. I invited Olivia and Sophia over for dinner. Cooking a simple pasta dish on my hot plate, we crowded around my fold-out table, drinking cheap wine from mismatched mugs. And for the first time in my new place, there was laughter. As my final year of college progressed, I developed a clearer philosophy about my situation. I could not control others' actions or choices, only my response to them. I would not allow my parents' betrayal to make me bitter or define my future. Instead, I would use this experience to become more compassionate, more independent, and more appreciative of the relationships I did have. I began a blog documenting my architectural inspirations and design process. What started as a portfolio supplement became a creative outlet and eventually attracted a small following of other design students and professionals. Comments and feedback from readers gave me a sense of community in my chosen field that I had not expected. One reader, the owner of a small interior design business, reached out about collaborating on a local project. This connection led to a paid freelance opportunity, designing a custom Yulton bookshelf system for a home office. Seeing my design go from concept to reality, watching the clients' faces as they ran their hands over the finished shelves gave me a sense of accomplishment that transcended my personal struggles. By the end of the school year, my life looked nothing like I had imagined it would a year earlier. My apartment was still small, but I had made it my own with secondhand furniture plants from the community garden and framed prints of my own architectural drawings. My budget was still tight, but not desperately so. I had a small emergency fund growing in a savings account and was no longer terrified by unexpected expenses. Most importantly, I had built a circle of support people who chose to be in my life and valued me for who I was. Olivia and Sophia had become like sisters. Professor Sullivan continued to mentor me, recommending books and connecting me with alumni in the field. Even my elderly neighbor Nancy still called regularly, though her updates about my family had become less frequent. "I think your parents are having money troubles," she mentioned during one call. "There have been some tense conversations on the porch lately, and Tyler seems to be home all the time now, not going out much." I absorbed this information without letting it affect my day-to-day life. Whatever was happening with my family, it was no longer my immediate concern. I had my own challenges to focus on, my own life to build. The pain had not disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something I could carry without being crushed by it. As summer approached and my final semester of college loomed on the horizon, I felt a sense of cautious optimism. I had survived the worst year of my life and emerged stronger, more capable, and more clear-eyed about what truly mattered to me. I still had moments of sadness and anger about what had happened, but they no longer defined me. I was becoming someone new, someone forged in difficulty, but not hardened by it. Someone with steel in her spine, just as my grandmother had always seen. 9 months after I walked out of my childhood home, Nancy called with news that sent a jolt through my carefully constructed new life. "Chelsea, dear, I thought you should know. There seems to be some trouble with your brother," she began, her voice lowered as if someone might overhear. "There was quite a commotion last night. I could hear your father shouting and Tyler was crying. Something about people attacking him online, calling his house, making threats. My first instinct was concern despite everything. Is he okay? Are they calling the police?" "I am not sure about the details," Nancy admitted. "But this morning, I saw Tyler sitting in his car for the longest time just staring at nothing. He looked terrible, like he had not slept. Your mother came out eventually and coaxed him back inside. After hanging up, I found myself doing something I had promised myself I would not do. Looking at Tyler's social media accounts, his most recent stream had ended abruptly with the chat section filled with hostile messages. Digging deeper into gaming forums, I discovered what had happened. Tyler had been caught using racial slurs during a live stream with another popular gamer. The clip had gone viral, and the backlash was intense. Sponsors were dropping him, followers were unsubscribing in droves, and his reputation was in free fall. A part of me felt a vindictive satisfaction. A small voice whispering that he deserved this after everything that had happened. But a larger part recognized that Tyler was still my brother, barely out of his teens, suddenly facing the darker side of internet fame. The bubble he and my parents had built had burst spectacularly. 2 weeks later, Nancy called again. "Your parents were arguing on the front lawn yesterday. Something about money and bad investments. Your father kept saying, 'We spent everything we had on his equipment, and now it is worthless.' Your mother was crying." I absorbed this information with a strange detachment. The family that had cast me out was facing their own crisis now, but I was too focused on my own path to be pulled back into their drama. My final semester of college had begun, and I was determined to finish strong, and I did. As graduation approached, my senior design project was selected for the university's annual showcase, an honor typically reserved for graduate students. Professor Sullivan had tears in his eyes when he congratulated me. "I have been teaching for 27 years, he said, "and I have rarely seen work of this caliber from an undergraduate. You have truly transformed this year, Chelsea." The job offer came a week before graduation from Nakamura, architectural firm where I had interned in Hawaii. They had tracked my progress through Professor Sullivan, who had apparently been sending them updates on my work. "We believe you have the talent and perspective we value in our team," the email read. "Your ability to overcome personal obstacles while maintaining excellence in your studies demonstrates the resilience we seek in our associates." The starting salary was more than I had dared hope for, with benefits, including health insurance and relocation assistance to their Portland office. Reading the offer letter in my tiny apartment, I felt a wave of emotions so powerful it nearly knocked me off my feet. This was validation not just of my professional abilities but of every difficult choice I had made over the past year. My graduation ceremony was bittersweet. As I sat among my classmates in cap and gown, I scanned the audience, a small part of me still hoping to see familiar faces, despite not having sent an invitation home. There were none. When my name was called and I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, the cheers came from Olivia, Sophia, Professor Sullivan, and a few classmates, not from the people who had raised me. "We are so proud of you," Sophia said afterward as our small group gathered for photos. She and Olivia had organized a celebration dinner at a restaurant I had always considered too expensive for my budget. They had invited everyone who had been part of my support system during the difficult year, my chosen family. As we shared a meal and toasted to the future, I realized how far I had come from that devastating day when I had walked out of my parents' house with only a backpack and a duffel bag. I had not just survived, I had rebuilt my life from the ground up. With my new job set to begin in a month, I gave notice at my apartment and the design firm where I had been working part-time. I found a small but bright one-bedroom apartment in Portland. Signing the lease online with the security deposit covered by my relocation package. For the first time since leaving home, I allowed myself to buy a few new things. A proper desk, chair, a quality mattress, kitchenware that matched. My plans were progressing smoothly until an unexpected call disrupted everything. It was grandmother's neighbor informing me that Grandma Ruth had been hospitalized after a fall. "She is asking for you," the woman said. "The doctors say it is not life-threatening, but at her age, any injury is serious." I booked a bus ticket, immediately arranging to stay with my grandmother's neighbor during my visit. The hospital was in Cincinnati, less than an hour from my hometown, a proximity I had been avoiding for nearly a year. On my second day at the hospital, as I was returning from the cafeteria with a cup of tea, I froze in the corridor. My mother was standing at the nurses stationed her back to me. She looked smaller somehow. Her shoulders hunched, her once carefully maintained hair now showing significant gray. I considered turning around, avoiding the confrontation, but before I could move, she turned and saw me. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. "Chelsea," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I did not know you would be here." "Grandma Ruth asked for me," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "Why are you here?" "She is my mother," Mom said simply. An awkward silence stretched between us. "You look good, healthy." "I am," I said. "I graduated last week with honors." Something flickered across her face, pride mixed with regret. "I saw on Facebook one of your classmates posted photos." Another pause. "Your father and we wanted to come, but we thought that I would not want you there." I finished for her. "You were probably right." Mom glanced around the busy hospital corridor. "This is not the place to talk. But Chelsea, things at home, they are not good. Tyler has been having a hard time. His channel, all those followers, they turned on him after he made a mistake. The sponsorships dried up." I heard I said, not explaining how. "Your father invested a lot in Tyler's streaming career. Too much as it turns out." She twisted her wedding ring nervously. "The new car, the equipment, everything." We took out a second mortgage on the house. I felt a cold anger rising. "Why are you telling me this? Do you expect me to feel sorry for you after what you did?" Tears welled in her eyes. "No, I do not expect that. I have missed you so much, Chelsea." "We all have. Even Tyler, though, he would never admit it." "I have to get back to Grandma," I said, stepping around her. "She is waiting for her tea." "Of course," Mom said, wiping at her eyes. "Will you be at the house at all while you are in town?" I paused, considering the question. Number. "I am leaving as soon as Grandma is stable. I am starting a new job in Portland next month." "Portland? That is so far away." The hurt in her voice was evident. "It was far away the moment you decided a live stream setup was more important than your daughter," I replied, then continued down the hall without looking back. That brief encounter shook me more than I wanted to admit. Seeing my mother, hearing about their financial troubles, learning that Tyler's streaming career had imploded, all of it stirred up emotions I had been working hard to process and move beyond. As I sat with my grandmother that afternoon, she seemed to sense my turmoil. "You saw Linda?" she stated rather than asked. I nodded. "She told me things are bad at home. Financial problems because of all they invested in Tyler's streaming." Grandma Ruth took my hand in hers. "They have made poor choices, all of them. But choices can be unmade. Wounds can heal if there is will on both sides. I do not know if I am ready to forgive them," I admitted. "No one said anything about forgiveness." "Not yet," she replied with surprising firmness. "But you might need to hear them out, if only for your own peace. Carrying anger is exhausting, Chelsea. Trust me, I know." I considered her words carefully. "I will think about it, but right now I need to focus on you getting better and me getting ready for my new job." She patted my hand. That is fair. Just remember, being strong does not always mean standing alone. Sometimes it means being strong enough to listen, even when every instinct tells you to walk away. As I prepared to leave Cincinnati a few days later, my grandmother recovering well and in good spirits, I found myself at a crossroads. Portland represented a fresh start, a clean break from the past, and all its painful associations. But there was unfinished business here. Questions left unanswered, wounds still raw despite the distance in time. In the end, I decided to give myself the closure I needed. Before boarding my bus back to college, I sent a text message to my mother. I am leaving town tomorrow. If you want to talk, really talk, I will meet you at Riverside Park at 10:00 the morning. The response came almost immediately. We will be there, all of us. 1 year. It had been exactly 1 year since I had walked out of my childhood home backpack, slung over my shoulder, uncertain where I would sleep that night. Now I stood at the entrance to Riverside Park, watching my family approach from the parking lot. They looked different, all of them. My father's confident stride was gone, replaced by a hesitant gait I had never seen before. My mother's hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, no makeup on. Her face. And Tyler, the golden child, the streaming star, looked like a shadow of his former self, thin and pale, his eyes downcast. We sat at a picnic table near the river, an awkward family reunion with the rushing water providing background noise to fill our silences. No one seemed to know how to begin. You look good, Dad finally said, his voice gruff. Healthy? I am, I replied. I graduated last week. I have a job lined up in Portland with a firm I interned with. Portland, Oregon, Mom asked. That is so far. That is the point, I said simply. More silence? Tyler fidgeted. With the sleeve of his hoodie still not meeting my eyes, Chelsea, Dad began, then stopped, clearing his throat. I do not know how to do this. I have never been good at admitting when I am wrong. That is an understatement, I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. I deserve that. He acknowledged what we did to you was wrong, inexcusably wrong. I got caught up in the excitement of Tyler's streaming success. I saw dollar signs and fame, and I made a terrible choice. Mom reached across the table, not quite touching my hand, but extending her own. We both did. We were so blinded by the possibility of what Tyler's career could become that we forgot what really mattered. Our family, you. I looked at Tyler, who still had not spoken. Do you have anything to say? He finally raised his eyes to meet mine. They were red-rimmed, either from lack of sleep or crying. Maybe both. I am sorry, he said, his voice cracking. I got so wrapped up in the followers and the money and the attention. I thought I was better than everyone, better than you. And now it is all gone. And I realized what really matters too late. What happened? I asked, though I already knew parts of the story from Nancy and my online research. Tyler explained how his rapid rise in the streaming world had gone to his head, how he had started behaving more outrageously to keep viewers engaged, saying things he would never say in real life, how one night, frustrated by a losing streak in a game, he had used racial slurs that were clipped and shared widely. The backlash was immediate and devastating. The sponsors pulled out first, he said, staring at his hands. Then the viewers started leaving. People I thought were my friends in the gaming community distanced themselves. Some people found our address, started calling the house at all hours. I got death threats. Dad picked up the thread. We had invested everything in Tyler's career, the equipment, the car to help with his image, even hired a manager for a while. We took out a second mortgage, maxed out credit cards. We thought it would all pay off many times over. We were fools, Mom added softly, and the worst part is what we did to you in the process. Throwing you out of your own home for a dream that turned into a nightmare. I sat silently processing their words. There was genuine remorse in their voices, in their expressions, but it did not erase the year of struggle I had endured. The nights I had gone to bed hungry, the times I had cried myself to sleep in a strange apartment, wondering why I was not enough for them to love. I spent the last year rebuilding my life from nothing. I said, finally working multiple jobs while maintaining a course load. living in an apartment where I could hear my neighbors fighting through the walls, counting pennies for bus fare. And the hardest part was not the poverty or the exhaustion. It was knowing my family had decided I was disposable. Tears streamed down my mother's face now. Dad looked away, his jaw clenched tight against his own emotion. Tyler stared at the table, shoulders slumped. But I continued. I also discovered my own strength. I found people who valued me, supported me without conditions. I learned that I can survive things I never thought I could, and I built a future for myself by myself. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen. Yesterday, I saw I had 33 missed calls from Mom and a text, asking, "Where are you?" It felt like déjà vu from a year ago, except then no. One called to see where I had gone or if I was safe. Mom sobbed openly now. "I was so worried when you did not answer. I thought maybe you had changed your mind about meeting us or that something had happened to you. And then I realized that is how you must have felt for months, wondering if we cared at all." "Did you?" I asked bluntly. "Did you worry about me at all after I left? Every day?" She whispered. But pride and shame kept me from reaching out properly. I would start to call, then hang up, not knowing what to say. How do you apologize for something so terrible? Dad finally turned back to face me. "I was wrong, Chelsea. Completely, utterly wrong. Not just about the room and forcing you out, but about everything. About valuing Tyler's potential income over your actual achievements. About treating you like you were less important because you were responsible and independent." Tyler spoke up again. "After everything fell apart with my channel, I fell into a pretty bad depression. I could not leave my room for weeks. That is when it really hit me what we had done to you. You lost your actual room, your home, your family, and you still managed to succeed. I lost a stupid streaming career and fell apart completely. What do you want from me now?" I asked the question I had been holding back. "Why did you want to see me?" They exchanged glances. "We wanted to apologize first and foremost," Mom said, "to tell you how deeply sorry we are and how much we regret what we did." And Dad added to ask if there is any way forward from here, any possibility of rebuilding some kind of relationship. "We know we do not deserve it. We know we have no right to ask. But we love you, Chelsea. We always have, even when we failed to show it." I looked at each of them. In turn, these familiar strangers who had been my family. The anger that had sustained me for months had mellowed into something more complex. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. "I am not moving back home," I said firmly. "My life is on a different path now, and I am taking the job in Portland." Their faces fell, but they nodded in acceptance. But I continued, "I am willing to stay in touch. Phone calls, occasional visits, maybe. I cannot just pretend the last year did not happen. Trust has to be rebuilt slowly." Relief washed over their faces. "That is more than we hoped for," Mom said. As we talked further, I learned more about their current situation. The house was at risk of foreclosure. Dad had taken on extra shifts at his construction job. Mom was looking for additional work beyond her administrative position. Tyler had dropped out of community college and was working at a local electronics store, trying to help with the family finances. "What are your plans now?" I asked Tyler. He shrugged. "I do not know. I messed up college, messed up streaming. I am not sure what I am good at anymore." "You were always good with computers even before the streaming," I pointed out. "Maybe look into IT certification programs. They are shorter than college degrees but can lead to decent jobs." He looked surprised at my suggestion. "You would help me figure that out. After everything, I am not doing it for you," I clarified. "I am doing it because I do not want our parents working themselves to death, trying to fix the financial mess you all created. The sooner you get on your feet, the better for everyone." We spent another hour in the park, the conversation gradually becoming less strained. We were not fixed, not by a long shot, but we were talking, really. Talking perhaps for the first time in years. Before I left to catch my bus, I made my boundaries clear. I am willing to help with advice and emotional support. I will stay in touch and work on rebuilding our relationship, but I am not contributing financially to fixing this situation. I have my own life to build now. Dad nodded. That is more than fair. This is our mess to clean up. As I stood to leave, Tyler asked hesitantly, would it be okay if I called you sometimes just to talk, or if I need advice about school or whatever I end up doing? I looked at my younger brother, seeing vulnerability where there had once been only arrogance. Yes, I said. You can call. I might not always answer right away, but I will call back when I can. Mom hugged me goodbye, holding on. A beat too long. I am so proud of the woman you have become, Chelsea. I just wish it had not taken losing you to see how amazing you are. Dad shook my hand formally, then pulled me into an awkward hug. We will do better, he promised. Whatever it takes, however long it takes. As I walked away, I did not look back. This was not a fairy tale. Reconciliation where all was instantly forgiven and forgotten. This was the first tentative step on a long, uncertain road. I had made no promises beyond staying in touch, and they had asked for nothing more than that. It was enough for now. On the bus back to my apartment, I thought about the choices before me. I could hold on to the anger and hurt, using it as a shield against ever being vulnerable with my family again, or I could cautiously allow them the chance to prove through actions, rather than words, that they had truly changed and recognized the wrong they had done. The second path was riskier, opening the possibility of further disappointment. But it also offered something the first path did. Not the potential for healing, not just for them, but for me as well. I was not ready to forgive, not yet. But I was ready to watch and wait to see if genuine remorse could translate into meaningful change. I thought of my grandmother's words about the exhaustion of carrying anger, and I felt the truth of them in my bones. The past year had made me stronger, but it had also tired me in ways I was only beginning to recognize. Perhaps laying down some of that burden gradually and cautiously was its own form of strength. As the bus carried me back toward the life I had built for myself, I felt neither triumph nor defeat, but something more nuanced, a quiet determination to move forward on my own terms, allowing the possibility of reconciliation without depending on it. My family might or might not become part of my future in a meaningful way. Either way, I would be okay. I had proven that to myself beyond any doubt. 6 months. After our meeting in the park, I stood in the kitchen of my Portland apartment preparing dinner while talking to my mother on speakerphone. These calls had become a weekly ritual, sometimes awkward, sometimes surprisingly comfortable, always necessary for the slow rebuilding of trust between us. Tyler got the certification, Mom was saying, pride evident in her voice. The IT company downtown offered him an entry-level position starting next month. That is great, I replied, genuinely pleased. Tell him, congratulations from me. Is he still planning to take those night classes at the community college? Yes, he starts in the fall. Just 2 courses to begin with to see how he manages with the new job. After hanging up, I moved around my kitchen with a sense of contentment that would have been unimaginable a year and a half ago. My apartment was modest, but bright, with large windows overlooking a tree-lined street. My job at the architectural firm was challenging and rewarding. I had made new friends in Portland, joined a local hiking group, and even started dating someone, though it was still too new to know where it might lead. The journey to this point had been anything but straight or easy. After that first meeting with my family, we had maintained cautious contact. Phone calls, text messages, occasional video chats. There had been setbacks, moments when old patterns threatened to reassert themselves. Once Dad had made a dismissive comment about my career choice compared to what Tyler's streaming could have been, and I had not spoken to him for 3 weeks afterward, but he had called to apologize, a significant step for a man who had rarely admitted wrongdoing in the past. Tyler and I had developed a relationship different from anything we had shared before. Gone was the competitive dynamic of our childhood, replaced by a more balanced interaction. He asked for advice about his courses and job interviews. I offered suggestions when asked, but was careful not to overstep. We were learning to be siblings as adults without the distorting lens of parental favoritism. The financial situation at home remained difficult, but was gradually improving. Dad had taken a better paying position with a commercial construction company. Mom had found weekend work at a local bookstore to supplement her income. They had restructured their mortgage and were slowly paying down the credit card debt accumulated during Tyler's streaming days. I had visited home once for Thanksgiving. Walking into the house had been harder than I expected, memories flooding back as I crossed the threshold. My old bedroom was now a simple guest room, all traces of the elaborate streaming setup gone. We had eaten dinner at the same table where 18 months earlier my father had told me to stay in the shed or get out. The irony was not lost on any of us. That visit had been a milestone, painful, but necessary. We had talked more openly about what had happened, about the hurt caused and the consequences that continued to ripple through all our lives. There had been tears from all of us, not the tears of manipulation or self-pity, but of genuine reckoning with hard truths. My grandmother had been right about the exhaustion of carrying anger. As I gradually let go of some of that burden, I found more energy for my own life, my own dreams. This did not mean forgetting or pretending the hurt had never happened. It meant choosing not to let that hurt determine my future or consume my present. The most significant change came 3 months after our park meeting when I received a package at my Portland apartment. Inside was a small wooden box beautifully crafted with my name engraved on the lid. A note from my father explained that he had made it himself working evenings in his friend's wood shop. I cannot replace what was lost. He had written the trust, the security, the belief that your home would always be there for you. But I want you to know that I think about that every day. This box is not meant to hold just physical things, but to represent my commitment to creating something new between us, something built with care and meant to last. Inside the box was a house key and another note. Your room is always ready. Not because we expect you to need it, but because we want you to know you always have a place with us whenever and however you choose to use it. I had cried then alone in my apartment, complex emotions washing through me. Not simple forgiveness or easy reconciliation, but acknowledgement of a genuine effort to make amends in a tangible way. Now, as I prepared to host my own small dinner party for colleagues from the architectural firm, I thought about how far I had come from that devastating day when I had been told to live in a shed or leave. The strength I had discovered in myself during that year of struggle had not diminished as circumstances improved. If anything, it had become more deeply rooted, more fundamental to my identity. I had learned that family can be both a birthright and a choice, that some relationships are worth fighting for, while others must be allowed to change or even end. That boundaries are not walls but necessary definitions of healthy interaction. That forgiveness is not a single moment but a process, one that happens in its own time and cannot be forced or rushed. Most importantly, I had learned that my worth was never dependent on others recognizing it. In the darkest moments when I had felt most abandoned and betrayed, I had found resources within myself I never knew existed. The resilience that had carried me through that year was not a temporary adaptation to crisis, but a fundamental aspect of who I was. As my guests arrived and the evening unfolded in laughter and conversation, I felt a deep gratitude for the journey that had brought me here, not because the pain had been necessary or the betrayal justified, but because I had refused to be defined by what had been done to me. Instead, I had defined myself by how I had responded by the life I had chosen to build from the ruins of what had been taken away. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I sat by my window, looking out at the city lights. I thought about the many possible futures that stretched before me, some, including my family, in significant ways, others less so. Whatever shape those relationships took going forward would be determined not by obligation or habit, but by mutual respect and genuine care. I touched the silver bracelet on my wrist, my grandmother's gift that had accompanied me through the hardest year of my life. For my strong girl, she had said I was stronger now, not despite what had happened, but because of how I had faced it. The steel in my spine that she had always seen was now tempered by experience, resilient and flexible rather than brittle, sometimes losing. What you think you need is the pathway to discovering what you truly require. A room in my parents' house had never been the true source of my security. That came from within, from the knowledge that I could face the unthinkable and not just survive but thrive, that I could build a home for myself first in my heart and then in the world. As I looked toward the future, I felt neither the burden of resentment nor the vulnerability of blind trust. Instead, I felt the steady confidence of someone who knows her own value and chooses her path accordingly. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the same determination that had carried me through the past. Not alone unless I chose to be, but always on my own terms. Sometimes our deepest wounds become our greatest teachers if we have the courage to learn from them without becoming them. My parents' betrayal had taught me about my own strength. My year of struggle had taught me about resilience and self-reliance. The slow process of reconciliation was teaching me about forgiveness not as a gift to others, but as freedom for myself. Have you ever faced a betrayal from those who should have protected you? How did you find the strength to rebuild your life? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. This journey has taught me that sharing our experiences can help others feel less alone in their struggles. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more reflections on family resilience and finding your way forward after loss. And remember, sometimes the family we create through friendship and mutual support is as powerful as the one we are born into. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the strength within yourself to face whatever challenges come your way.